Hello Internet, Zach here, and welcome back to Collecting the Elements. This is fire. This is brimstone. And it looks like an unpleasant afterlife, doesn't it? So this episode, as you might have guessed, is about element number 16, sulfur. The 10th most common element in the universe, and the 5th most common on planet Earth. Sulfur is what gives Jupiter's moon Io its yellow color, and on Earth it's found everywhere. No, seriously, everywhere. It's in the proteins that make up your hair. It's in the proteins that give your skin its elasticity. It's in the smell of garlic, grapefruit, and skunk. It's also in the smell that they put into propane and natural gas so you can smell if you have a gas leak. It's in the Epsom salt you soak your feet in. It's in various hormones and vitamins and amino acids and proteins. Yeah, it's... Sulfur has such rich and varied chemistry I could ramble on about it for 3 hours. But I won't. So I got my sulfur from Ed's House of Gems in northeast Portland as the mineral native sulfur, also known as brimstone. And it's been sitting around. I've had a sample here on my table for months now, and I'm just now finally getting around to doing the actual purification to make a nice crystalline sample of high purity sulfur that I can hang up on my table. So let me show you how I did that. So it's a jury-rigged together test tube rack to hold up the test tubes and keep them from falling over while I gently warm them in the saucepan of science. So this first one here is empty. These two here contain bits and pieces of sulfur, just crushed up sulfur from Ed's House of Gems. I actually tried to purify the sulfur back in December, but things didn't go so well because I was doing it wrong. So this time I'm going to do it correctly. The way I'm going to be purifying the sulfur is with a method called recrystallization. Sulfur is soluble in, this should say xylenes, because there are actually 3 different molecules in here: ortho, meta, and paraxylene. But anyway, sulfur is soluble in this, and a lot more soluble at high temperatures than it is at low temperatures. So what I can do is pour the xylene over the sulfur, dissolve the sulfur in the xylene at high temperature, which is what this water bath is for. It's going to heat everything up to 100 Celsius or 212 Fahrenheit. At that temperature, a lot of sulfur will dissolve in the xylene. Then I'm going to take it off the heat and let the sulfur slowly crystallize out. As the temperature drops, the solubility of the sulfur drops, and it'll fall out of solution and crystallize. The third test tube is an empty test tube that I'm going to pour the contents of these two into. And it's sitting in the water bath just so that it gets to the same temperature as everything else and knocks everything over. Okay, now that I've fixed the test tube stand, everything's wired properly, it's time to turn on the heat. Alright, the water's just starting to boil now, but it doesn't look like any of the sulfur's really started to dissolve yet. So I'll be back when the sulfur starts dissolving. Okay, this has been sitting here boiling for almost an hour, and I think this is about as much sulfur as will dissolve at this temperature. It's not the lemon yellow that you get from boiling xylene, but this is probably as good as it's going to get. So what I'm going to do here is transfer the xylene that's already saturated with sulfur into the big test tube. You'll see sulfur is already starting to crystallize out on the walls of the tube. I'm going to put these back in the hot water to keep them warm. And I'm going to take these two tubes now out away from the heat and refill them with xylene. Okay, both of these test tubes have been refilled with fresh xylenes, which, as you can see, the fresh xylene is crystal clear compared to this, which is quite yellow. I'm keeping that on the heat to keep the sulfur in solution so I can try to drop it out and recrystallize it all at once. Alright, it's been almost another hour. All the sulfur in this tube has basically dissolved. So I'm going to transfer that over to here. Tongs exist for a reason. In the other one, I still have quite a bit of sulfur. Put this back in where it's still warm. This I'm going to set aside. There's still sulfur in there, but I'm not going to keep trying to get that last little bit of sulfur out. You're going to want to see inside this test tube. So this is just a paper towel with some distilled water. Wipe off the sodium carbonate that's built up on here. And the sulfur is already starting to crystallize. So, let's get the camera into a good position for this. There we go. I've got the test tube taped to the stand here. Alright, I stuck the sulfur and xylene mixture into some cold water to see if it would crystallize out any last little bits of sulfur. So yeah, there's still a little bit. Anyway, those are fluffy sulfur crystals. So to recover them, I'm going to try to filter them, and hopefully this won't destroy my funnel. If it does, I'll have to go back to Dollar Tree and get another $1 3-pack of funnels. So, here goes. Okay, it's about the best I'm going to do there. And there is the yield of sulfur crystals. And the funnel is not dead. So I'm going to dry these out, and then we'll get on to ampouling them. They're still drying, and admittedly, this could take a while. But look how sparkly the sulfur crystals are. Anyway, now for the best part. Transferring this pile of sulfur crystals into an ampoule. Darn it! So I actually have way more sulfur than I actually need. And it stuck to the glass. It's not sticking in the lower ampoule. Alright, nice, shiny, free-flowing crystalline sulfur. And it's hooked up to the vacuum pump and the high voltage power supply. Wait, what? Okay, my camera doesn't seem to want to pick that up. I'm gonna have to turn the lights off. I really hope this comes out in the video. Because, wow. Alright, the sulfur's still under vacuum, but I had to turn the high voltage power supply off because it was starting to interfere with the phone's ability to shoot video. Pesky, pesky high voltage. So, time to get the torch and seal this off. Alright, but does it still glow? Yes, it does still glow. Mineral brimstone, high purity elemental sulfur. And I'm going to put these both up in my table here. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, press the like button. If you know someone else who might enjoy it, press the share button. If you want to see more, hit subscribe and ring the little bell. And if you want to help me make more videos, send me a few coins on Patreon or PayPal. Links are down in the description. Anyway, I'll see you next time.